So I think that those, from what you've said, I think that they are attributable to the colloid cyst. I think they are very definitely pathological, and from my reading, that kind of, another phrase for them is thunderclap headaches. Those kind of headaches are usually symptomatic of pathology rather than just something like a migraine.
But it also talks about deteriorating gait as being a worry with a colloid cyst.
You see the gait I've got
his
now?
His gait
My
since
gait
the
wasn't
summer.
like that before.
We were still walking on cliff tops in the summer. We can just go down our road.
It's been a nightmare to just walk to
this
office from the car today. Really, really difficult.
We can't.
And there's no way. I just find it very hard to reconcile. If you've got functional symptoms, surely they won't be affected in the same way by triggers and deterioration. In the way that, see, my gait deteriorated after I had a physio made me hop across my driveway.
Not the physio.
So in November, I saw a physio to try and get someone to record how bad I am. It was after that my gait deteriorated substantially. Okay.
And that was hopping and skitting.
And I had to hop for 5 metres there and back, run 5 metres there and back, skip 5 metres there and back. I hadn't done any of that for 3 years at that point. And after that, I ended up with this jerky. This gait is new. So the trigger, it wasn't psychiatric, it wasn't stress, it was a physical trigger that led to a change. If I've got a colloid cyst, that high impact activity, in my head I've been thinking, well, I was thinking it was the craniocervical junction, okay? But the alternative is it was a colloid cyst, and it got a bit shaken by the activity, or I don't know. Just the same as the logic behind the severe. See, the problem you've got is that the GPs, the doctors before you, haven't taken my symptoms sufficiently seriously at the time. So if the Bell's palsy had been addressed back then, and if someone hadn't told the nice A&E doctor that a Bell's palsy can't be caused by an LP, they probably would have done tests then that might have actually shown up.
It can be caused. I don't know whether you know this, but I had to look into it.
Imagine, if you will, that what we're really looking at is 4 years of people not doing their job right. I'm not saying nobody's done their job right. I would say some haven't. But imagine if no one has for 4 years, and then you've got me in front of you, and there's none of that real-time assessment that should have been done, that we've been trying to do all the way along, but because we're just patients, nobody listens to us. Imagine if that had been done, there would be a different picture in front of you now. And instead, you've got the picture of someone with all these symptoms, all this history, wadges of paper. I've read about this. If you go into a doctor's surgery with loads of symptoms lists, the starting point is to think that you're functional. Okay, I've read that. Right. So I've got all these yellow flags, but they're not because I'm psychiatrically imagining my condition and psychosomatically generating it and goodness knows what. I'm probably one of the most objective people you will ever meet, because I've had to be. I mean, you can't sit there in front of Parliament and advise ministers without having to be completely humble and be prepared to know when you're right and wrong, and make sure that you've actually taken responsibility for whether you're making a right decision or not. I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent, I'm sorry.
Nick has mentioned a couple of times about overlay, and actually, Nick, you don't overlay things, you're just trying to move when it's difficult to move.
Yeah, but I do think...
And so Nick will try to help himself by moving in a different way. And he's been very, very worried, particularly by the approach that's been taken up to this point, that the suggestion from Dr. Gregory was very much that this was all of Nick's own making. Dr. Byrne has since tried to explain that it's
Dr. John Byrne down in Poulis,
that it's just to do with the fact that, like Nick was trying to explain, if your system has been operating in a poorly informed way over a period of time, it'll adopt new habits that are not necessarily the right habits, and then they are reproduced when you try and do things.
Yeah, so I think what happened when I first saw Dr. Gregory, the mix-up I probably had functional overlay with what was going on with my face. So I had the Bell's palsy. I might have had some synkinesis. I actually wrote to the Southampton facial physios about that, but couldn't get an appointment. And after the right-sided weakness episodes, it used to come up, particularly on neck flexion after being in the bath. Oddly, it was where and it didn't seem to be stress generated. It seemed to be subject to a physical trigger. But what I do think happened is that I got so used to it. If your face is doing things, you sort of it's hard not to then sort of go with it. So I do think there probably was some functional overlay, no doubt about it, because when he talked to me about there were two things that happened. He talked to me about functional, and I started on the aspirin, and there was some improvement because I became aware that I needed to make sure there was no functional overlay, and I've been doing that ever since, trying to avoid functional overlay in everything I do. And I think it even creeps into my gait at times. But today I'm trying really, really hard to avoid any bad habits so that you can actually see it how it is. And it's not normal. That's the point. It's just not normal. And it's been not normal since the physical trigger, that not normal, like it is now, with the jerky thing and the whole body jerking along. That has been since November, after a physio got me hopping across my driveway.
But
and it wasn't the kind of thing that if I was I would imagine that even in the world of functional neurology, surely there's a need to look for triggers. And if you were trying to say, well, this would be an expected trigger for a functional neurology relapse, and this wouldn't, I doubt very much that hopping across your driveway is a functional neurology relapse trigger. I think more likely is probably when the doctor was swearing in the clinic. That would probably be more likely to generate functional neurology. So I don't think my current gait I think it is attributable to some organic cause. And we think it's due to the colloid cyst. We've read about the magnetic walking that you get with colloid cysts, where it's like your feet are stuck to the ground. Well, that's how it looks to us. So
Nick's,
lightning bolt gait.
He scuffs and he trips and he can't lift his foot off.
I can't make myself have extreme urinary frequency and urgency, and I just find it hard to see why that would. That has got worse. It's been bad for a long time. That's got dramatically worse in recent months. So if you look at this list again, it's got stable symptoms and acute deterioration. We're really worried that I'm heading into acute deterioration of my colloid cyst. If you attribute all of these symptoms that I've got that fit with the colloid cyst and normal pressure hypercephalus to functional neurology, then I'm going to be treated as a non-symptomatic colloid cyst, and I'm not going to get the care that symptomatic colloid cyst would get. And that's what we're desperately worried about.
I'm sure the surgeons really know they'll take this to examine you and do the
but are you able to?
How do